Okay, next we're going to talk about adding and changing hardware. Let's look at an overview of what we're going to cover. First, we're going to talk about how to use standard resources on a computer when installing and changing hardware. Then we'll talk about how to resolve resource conflicts. And then we'll talk about how to work with the most common ports. Now, some basic principles to follow when we add or change hardware. First of all, we need to remember that every device that's installed in the computer needs resources. It's got to have a device driver or it's going to work directly with BIOS. And it also has to have the system resources that we talked about. For example, an IRQ so that it can work with the processor, a DMA channel so that it can get access to memory without going through the processor, an input-output address that it's going to listen on for other devices and for the processor, and an upper memory address where it can store the information that it needs to run. And then it's going to have to work with the application software that's in the computer. Other guidelines for devices that we're going to install are that we want to install both the hardware and the software for the device. If you buy a network interface card, for example, from a computer store, you'll find that along with the card, along with the electronic component in the box, there'll also be a disk, either a CD-ROM or a floppy disk. And on that is the drivers to operate the device. So those need to be installed in the computer. Oftentimes, it's better to go ahead and install those before you install the actual card. We'll talk about that in just a little while. We want to install at all levels of software. In other words, if part of an installation needs to take place in the operating system itself, that's fine. But also we may need to, with some applications, we may need to tweak the installation in the application itself so that it works with that device. It depends on the application. And we need to be aware that we could have some resource conflicts. For example, a device might want the same IRQ as another device. It might want the same DMA channel or I/O address or upper memory address. It's possible for some devices to share an IRQ, but we have to set that up. So, overviewing installation, we're going to install the device driver, and then install the application software. But not necessarily in that order. We may want to install the device driver and then shut the computer down. Then install the electronic component. The reason we may want to do this is because of plug and play. When we start the system back up, plug and play will look for all the resources that that device needs. In addition, it will look for the device drivers for that device. And if it finds the device drivers, it will go ahead and do the installation. So I would highly recommend that with a plug-and-play device that we go ahead and install the software before we shut the computer down to install the hardware piece. There are many different types of device drivers, and we'll talk about some different types of device drivers in our next